Welcome everyone to our 7-part series that we're calling a recap of 2020. And what we're doing is we're looking at the 2020 retreat year, but retrospectively. The theme of that retreat was in challenging times, take heart and have courage. And throughout the 2020 year, there were different conferences or sessions that were offered on the retreat. And each one of them allowed us the opportunity to focus on a topic or an area that helped us to take heart and have courage, and not just to throw our hands up in the air, but to continue to grow in our walk with the Lord. So in our first week, we looked at the importance of being part of a community, that being connected, being in relationship with other people helps us to grow in our walk with the Lord. We also took a look at evangelization, and hopefully last week we got an appreciation for what evangelization really is and what it's not. Everything the church does is evangelization. And we looked at 7 different parts of evangelization from the greatest document ever written on evangelization, called Evangelization in the Modern World. This week we're going to look at the importance of formation. We're going to look at how if we're intentional about our formation, we will grow in the Lord, and we won't lose heart, and we'll have courage. So this is the way we tied it into our theme last year. So here's a couple of examples of the importance of formation, formation. So somebody becomes a doctor, and this takes a lot of work to become a doctor. But once a person is a doctor, he or she just doesn't stop learning and getting better in the profession. There's ongoing courses and classes and seminars that are required for any doctor. A doctor who studied 20 years ago but hasn't kept up with all the changes in medicine is going to leave something to be desired. So this is what we're talking about, like professional development, ongoing professional development. Oh, here's another one, a CPA. So somebody could have graduated in accounting and then studied for the CPA exam and passed it 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. But the professional organization of CPAs require people to continue to learn more and more about that and to deal with the changes that are happening. The same is true for people who are involved with running corporations and businesses. Somebody becomes the CEO of a company, and the worst thing she could do or he could do would be to stop learning. With the competition out there, people really need to constantly sharpen the edge. The next time I do this, I think I just want to write down pilot here. If a person gets his license or her license to fly a plane with 200, 300, 400 people in it, I hope that they're constantly improving. So these are examples of what's called initial formation, but then ongoing professional formation. That's what I want to talk about in this session. Jesus was involved with formation. He was involved with the formation of people. Jesus formed the disciples. He made people like himself. He formed them. He trained his followers so that they could think like him and speak like him and do what he did. So part of Jesus' ministry was forming disciples. But once Jesus formed the disciples, he continued to form them. He just didn't, wash his hands of responsibility. Jesus really made the continual formation of those disciples a big part of his life. The first type of formation is dealt with making disciples. And the second type, or the second half of this equation, dealt with maturing disciples. So they're kind of 2 different aspects of formation, 2 different types of formation that Jesus was involved with. When Jesus ascended to the heavens, the Holy Spirit came down upon the church, and the church assumed the ministry that Jesus had. So Jesus entrusted the ministry of making disciples and maturing disciples to the church. And that's you and I. Now, what we're going to do in this session is to focus on the second half of this equation. We want to talk about ongoing formation, not initial formation, but ongoing formation. And ongoing formation goes by lots of different names in the Catholic Church. Sometimes it's called ongoing faith formation, sometimes it's called ongoing conversion, sometimes it's ongoing catechesis, sometimes it's called post-baptismal catechesis because it takes place after a person has been baptized as compared to pre-baptismal catechesis or formation, which deals with making a disciple in the first place. So we are going to be talking about ongoing formation or continuing formation. Sometimes this is referred to as adult education. That is very, very inadequate. Education is part of what we're talking about, but to reduce ongoing faith formation to simply education is going to do a real disservice to it, and we're going to address that later. So we're talking about ongoing faith formation. Now, there are models of ongoing faith formation in the church. I'm just going to talk about three of them. The first is the priesthood. So people, men, are baptized, Christians and Catholics, receive the sacraments, and they feel a calling to the priesthood. Well, if a person is pursuing that vocation, they follow a very strict pattern. And this is all part of ongoing formation for people who are thinking about being candidates for the priesthood. So they're talking to their spiritual director, they're talking to some priests, they're going through different types of questionnaires and interviews. If they're right out of high school, then they go into a college program. Halfway through the college program, they do a spirituality year or a special year set aside. Then they come back and they do more years of college. Then they start theology and they become an acolyte and a lector and then a deacon and they're finally ordained a priest. See, that's a very, very thought out, planned formation process. Here's another example. People who want to be deacons, same thing. So a man discerns that he has a call to be a deacon. He might be married, he might not be married, he may be widowed, but it's a long program. It's a 5 or 6 year program that a deacon needs to follow so that he can be formed into a deacon. This is ongoing formation. And then another example would be people who want to join a religious community. Let's say there are women who want to join a religious community of women, or maybe there's men who want to join a religious community to be a brother or a priest. They could be Dominican sisters, they could be Redemptorists, they could be Dominicans or Franciscans, whatever. But if a person wants to join a religious community, they again follow a very strict program. So, a little personal sharing. I originally thought about joining a religious community called the Passionists. And the Passionists were founded in Italy in the 18th century. And in order to join the Passionists, you kind of submitted to a plan that they had in place to initiate people into the community. So I knew them during high school, I knew them during college. After college I lived in a monastery for a year in Pittsburgh. I did my novitiate year, but then after that year I didn't feel I was called to join a religious community. Took some time off, went to St. Charles Seminary and began a second formation process. So, well, you know what? This is what's really, really important. We talked about priests and deacons and religious, but let's talk about the formation program for the laity. So, don't know if this is true, but I would say 99% of everybody in the Catholic Church is a layperson. And what we need to do is focus on the formation or the ongoing formation of lay people. Now, most people feel that this is a real concern for the church in the United States. I'll just give you a couple of statistics that are kind of staggering. There are about 300 million people in the United States. 300 million people. There are 30 million people in the United States who self-designate themselves as ex-Catholics. They're no longer Catholic. Okay? That means 1 out of every 10 Americans is an ex-Catholic. That is a staggering statistic. The largest denomination in the United States of any Christian church is the Catholic Church. The second largest denomination, this is sad, are ex-Catholics. So we have not done a very good job of forming or continuing the formation of lay people. Now, we Catholics who are practicing our faith have lots of different names that we call these people who have left the church or who are not practicing their faith the way, maybe they should be practicing their faith. Whenever I do retreats here at the Malvern Retreat House, I often ask people, what are some of the names that we call those people? Well, sometimes they call them, A and P Catholics, Ashes and Palm Catholics, because they come to Mass when they're getting something free. This is what people share with me. Now, these are going to be funny, some of them, but don't smile too much. Sometimes they're called Creasters, Christmas and Easter Catholics, because that's when they come to church, Christmas and Easter. Or sometimes they're called CEO Catholics, Christmas and Easter only Catholics. We have other things that we call them. We call them lapsed Catholics or fallen away Catholics. Sometimes they're called cafeteria Catholics. They walk down the line in a cafeteria and they like this about the Catholic faith, so they keep it, but they don't like that about the Catholic faith, so they don't take it. They do like this about the faith and not that. So this is the cafeteria Catholic. Just recently I heard another one, Acme Catholics. Now, if you're from Philadelphia, we don't say Acme the right way, we say Acme. It's 3 syllables. But Acme Catholics. Always Christmas, maybe Easter. Always Christmas, maybe Easter. Okay. One other one, hatched, matched, and dispatched Catholics. Okay, hatched, matched, and dispatched. That they come to church 3 times. When they're hatched, when they're born, when they're matched, when they're married, and when they're dispatched, when they're buried. And this is what's really sad about hatched, matched, dispatched Catholics. 2 out of the 3 times they're carried into the church by someone else. When they're a little baby or when they've died. Now, we have all these names for them, but you know what God names them? You know what God calls them? Juan and Ting and Maria and Julius. And to God, they're his children, his sons and his daughters. So, maybe we need to get a little better at finding ways of bringing them back to the faith and forming them. And that's what this presentation is about. So, I think it's fair enough to say that the ongoing formation for the vast majority of people in the Catholic Church is inadequate. It's inadequate. And of those people who do attend Mass on Sunday, who are practicing their faith, sometimes we should be a little disappointed with how well we've formed them. Thank God they're coming to church. 15 to 20% of Catholics in the United States go to church on Sunday, every Sunday. 75 to 80% of Catholics don't go to church every Sunday. So, to be honest, we have a lot of work to do. And I think if we can address this issue of ongoing faith formation, I think we can start to turn the corner and to get on the solution side of some of this. Great. Let's move on, okay? What happens if lay people do not take their faith formation seriously? Okay, I'm going to offer 4 things. The first is this. You know what's going to happen? Good Catholics are just going to stall. Just stall, okay? There's a couple of gas stations around here, and I'm always looking at my dashboard to see where my gas is. knowing that I can pull in pretty quickly and fill it up again. But, when you run out of gas, you just start to putter, and then you start to putter, and then you say, I know this was coming, and then all of a sudden, you just stop or you stall. That's what happens to a lot of Catholics, because they're not intentionally involved with a serious faith formation program. They just stall. Okay, next, what else sometimes happens? They go elsewhere in the Catholic Church to find the formation they're looking for. Okay, they go elsewhere within the Catholic Church to find the formation they're looking for. So what does that look like? Well, you know what? This, I think, helps to explain the growth of some of the movements in the Catholic Church. So Communio and Liberazione is a great, great movement. Really big in Rome, really big in Italy, not so much here. Okay? Curcio is a movement in the church. The charismatic renewal was a movement in the church. The neo-catechumenal way, okay? Lumen Christi. There are just wonderful movements out there in the church, lots of times associated with religious communities that are forming Catholics. The Knights of Columbus, okay, would be another one. The Legion of Mary. So Catholics who want to grow in their faith and aren't finding it in their parish, they'll go elsewhere. What else? You know what? Sometimes they go elsewhere outside the church. Outside the church. And lots of times, Catholics who weren't practicing their faith, but want to start taking it a little bit more seriously, rediscover their faith or discover it for the first time in a lot of these very successful evangelical churches. Okay. There's a great church in the Archdiocese of Baltimore called Nativity. And Nativity is in Timonium, and it is just a great church. Every Sunday, it's packed with people, and young people, and families. It is just, it does your heart good to go there and see so many people. So that's in Timonium, Maryland. The pastor is very fond of saying that priests come to his parish to learn a little bit about it, and they see all these people, and they think he's doing a great job. And Father Mike White says that the church with the largest number of baptized Catholics in it on a given Sunday is down the road about 2 miles. So when I first heard that, I'm saying, there's another parish 2 miles down the road that's even better than this one? Well, it's a parish. It's not a Catholic parish. It's an evangelical church. And it's just filled with baptized Catholics who discovered or rediscovered their faith there. So that's sometimes what happens as well. And the fourth thing that sometimes happens when Catholics are not involved with the faith formation program, you know what? They just lose their faith. They lose their faith. So we just need to get serious about ongoing faith formation. Good. Alleluia, 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 alleluia. That was just to break it up a little bit. We finished the first half of this presentation, and now we want to spend some time on the second half. So let's ask this question. This is a great question. What forms people? If we think ongoing faith formation for lay people is important, we need to kind of hit the pause button and ask ourselves, what forms people? What forms people? Now, no one thing is going to form everybody. There's no one silver bullet that if you get this right, people are going to start being formed properly. So there's many things that form people. So what are they? Well, you know what? One is the example of other people. The example of other people. So when people see other people living their faith and taking it seriously, and they're filled with joy because of their relationship with Jesus Christ, that starts to get people questioning. And they want to have what that person does. What else? Reading the Bible. Okay, so the scriptures are super important for initial formation, but for ongoing formation. Now, what scriptures? Especially the Sunday scriptures. The Catholic Church says the scriptures proclaim that the Sunday liturgy are the primary way that we Catholics hear the scriptures and are formed by them. So the scriptures are important. Being part of a community. Community forms us in the faith. If an individual goes into a community and that community is living the Christian way of life, and if the individual is open to that and looking for it, the community just starts to form the person. Education is very important. It's not everything in formation, but a very systematic approach to the faith, to understanding and appropriating the faith is very, very important. What else? Prayer. Prayer helps to form people, both personal prayer and communal prayer. Another one, serving the poor. So if we want to grow in the faith, serving the poor helps to do that, and taking care of the marginalized in our society. Okay, let's think a little different. What else forms people? Well, suffering. Suffering forms people. And lots of times, a crisis will form people. When a person experiences a sudden death, or a divorce, or an illness, or some type of a tragedy. We don't want people to experience that, but God can use those situations to actually form people. Here's another one, a cross-cultural experience. A cross-cultural experience. And, a cross-cultural experience can take place locally, in another part of the city. It could take place nationally in another part of the United States, or it could take place internationally. And when we're able to get people out of their comfort zone in the United States and expose them, especially in a developing country, to some type of a cross-cultural experience, it can be a profound, transformative experience. And a great example of that is the Jesuit Volunteer Corps, that the Jesuits have a program for people who want to volunteer a year, usually 2 years of their lives. And they go to a place, usually here in the United States, working with the poor. Well, the JVC says that wrecks their lives. It's a nice image. Young people coming out of college experience this, and it completely wrecks their lives for the rest of their lives, and they're never the same. So here's a couple of more. Evangelizing, sharing our faith, helps our faith to mature. It helps it to grow. And being rejected because of our faith is another way of experiencing ongoing faith formation. It sounds funny, but when we're rejected, or even worse, when we're persecuted because of our faith, then our faith starts to deepen. A couple of days ago, I went to Wegmans, and I was checking out, and there was a guy behind the counter, and he had an accent. So I said to him, where's the accent from? Egypt? And he said, how did you know that? So I said, I just know a couple of Egyptian people. I said, have you been home lately to see Egypt? He says, I can't go home because I'm on the government list. I asked, why? Were you involved with politics? No. Education? No. He said, my faith. I said, you're a Coptic Christian? And he said, yeah. And then he pointed to his name, and it was a Christian name. And so this is subtle discrimination, but it's true. He was the account manager for a big company. And as soon as they heard him introduce himself by his Christian name, they would just hang up. So at the end of our little brief conversation, I thanked him for his witness, but his faith is a lot deeper than mine because he experienced that type of rejection. So there are a lot of different ways that people are formed in the faith. We could go on and on and on with them. And you know what's amazing? Jesus used all those experiences to form his disciples and then to continue to form them. So, okay, I said earlier that a lot of faith formation happens in movements, in organizations in the Catholic Church. And a lot of them are lay-oriented, or a lot of them kind of spring out of religious communities. But this is what's absolutely fundamental to keep in mind. The parish is the preeminent place where faith formation happens. The parish is the preeminent place where faith formation happens. Most of these people that we're talking about live in a parish. And the parish is the basic unit, it's the building block of a diocese, and the diocese of the universal church. So, our parishes need to learn how to offer all those experiences that really form people, that transform people, that change people. And our parishes need to offer them in a sequence that's well thought out and planned so that we can bring a person from point A to point B to point C to point D, and we can lead them along their spiritual growth. It's a spiritual growth plan that we need to offer people. But they need to be very specific steps. What we sometimes do in a parish is we just say to people, join a program. That's not enough. We wouldn't say that if a person wanted to join the priesthood or become a deacon or join a religious community. They're thought out. So parishes need to think out the faith formation plan that they're offering their members. And it has to be systematic. And people need to know what the steps are. They need to know. Those steps need to be acknowledged and articulated very, very clearly. Okay. Now, this is what happens in most parishes when it comes to faith formation. We offer programs. Now, programs are not bad, okay, but they're just not enough. They're not adequate. Sometimes it could be a 4-week program or a 6-week program or a 12-week program, whatever. Programs, we need to think differently about this when it comes to adult faith formation or ongoing catechesis, whatever we want to call it. There needs to be something more than programs. The other thing too is this: people form people more than programs form people. People form people more than programs form people. We need people in our parishes who think of themselves as formators. The French have this great word, formateur. It's a formator. It's a person who forms other people. We need to get people, we need to form people in our parishes who think of themselves as formators, who can actually form people. Maybe there are programs that they can use, but besides the programs, we need people. So people and programs are both needed to form people. And then finally, for you who are watching this, nothing replaces personal initiative. When it comes time for ongoing faith formation, the most important person is this person. So I would encourage you to take initiative when it comes to faith formation. You take initiative. Now, how can we do that? Well, part of the ways that we can do that is look around for what forms people, study other parishes, study other successful lay faith formation programs, and take the initiative and learn from them and maybe try to introduce them into your parishes. Okay? But take initiative. And you may have to be creative. There may be some pushback. But rather than simply kind of jumping ship in your parish and go somewhere else, talk to the right people in your parish. Think about how you can start a faith formation program that would really help you. And then you take the initiative, and then in time you can help other people. Okay, so this is our week 3 of a 7-week series on different topics that we addressed during the 2020 retreat year. Next week, we're going to be looking at the importance of leadership. So come back on Thursday for that presentation on leadership. These are longer than the other presentations, so feel free to watch them with other people. Hit the pause button halfway through, think about it, come back and watch it later. God bless everyone, and you're great.